Hello, welcome. My name is Dick Brown on the Woodside Town Council. Joining us, for those who don't know, and most of you don't know yet, our new town manager, Jason Ledbetter. What's particularly interesting about him being here is that he comes from Wairika, where they have a lot of experience with exactly what we're going to be talking about here. So we're very fortunate to have him join Woodside. Today we're going to be discussing what we as individual homeowners can do to help prevent catastrophic fires that just occurred down south. All of us who lived here in 2020 experienced our own extreme fire danger. When the Santa Cruz Mountain CZU lighting complex fire erupted. If you remember, the fire burned 86,509 acres up to Skyline Boulevard. And the only reason it didn't go over the top down into Woodside and Portola Valley and other communities is the wind changed. Think about that. That fire could have been catastrophic for the entire community, not just the west side of the mountains. Woodside Fire, Kim Gianlucci, who's our fire marshal. Sorry if I. She developed a number of programs that are designed to help owners protect their property, the danger of the fire. And here's what we learned from the Los Angeles fires, what we can do to harden our homes to protect from fire, and how to capitalize on the chipping program that Woodside has in place. And I'm not sure whether Portola Valley, which I believe is also here, has a similar chipper program, but at least this is what we have in Woodside. And then we're also going to hear from John Middleman, who's the chairman of our emergency committee. He's going to talk about how we can keep informed about emergency exit procedures and how we can work together in fire-safe communities. So help yourself to food in the back, brochures, and settle in and listen from Kim first.
Pick up my microphone here. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Kim Giuliacci. I'm your new fire marshal with Woodside Fire. I've been with Woodside Fire now for 2 years, almost 2.5 years, in this fire marshal role for 1.5 years almost. And it has been a sprint since I started. Before I started, many said, it's a marathon, take your time, but there's just so much to be done. I just don't want to lose momentum, and I feel time is of the essence because of the growing fires we see through the state, and we just have a lot of preparation to do. So with that, even though this is wildfire preparedness, I do have some lessons learned. We're not going to talk too much about home hardening, just a little bit about from lessons learned, why home hardening is important in defensible space. We can do later in the future, we'll have more workshops on home hardening and defensible space, which I have done a lot in Portola Valley and will continue to do, and we'll do more here in Woodside as well. But this is more of a general idea so you could see what was done, what happened in LA, and why it's important, and why we push so much on home hardening and defensible space. So we know we live in a wildland urban interface. We call it the WUI area. It is it's our whole district. Everywhere our fire district covers is all wildland urban interface. A lot of people have put a lot of, there's been a lot of mentality and thoughts on the hazard maps, which are just that, hazards. There's been changes in those maps that were put through CAL FIRE. Before we get started, I just wanted to put this information to rest. So a lot of areas in the Woodside Fire District, which is Woodside, Portola Valley, and the unincorporated areas of San Mateo County, they have all been categorized into a moderate, high, and very high fire hazard severity zone. There's a big difference between hazard and risk. So hazard is just looking at weather patterns, topography, minimal things, not like a risk model, which is what insurance companies base a lot of their information is more on risk, not hazard. But with the new maps that finally did come out, a lot of areas in our district were reduced. Some went from a very high to a high, some from a high to a moderate. The majority of this district is in moderate. They take this from a very high, their magnitude of what they're looking at with the microscope is not as fine-tuned as what we see here in the district. When I drive around, I know what our hazards are, I know what our risks are, and I'm very well aware what will come through here if a wildfire happen or an earthquake, because wildfires happen from earthquakes, is that there will be conflagrations around because of our dense vegetation, dry vegetation, and with it, all the structures that are in between. So this is why taking these lessons that we should continue to learn, we need to start changing our frame of mind of how we're constructing, how we're remodeling, and how we're doing our vegetation plants, or planting our vegetation. So with that, adapting to wildfire is living with fire. And I put that because we live in a very beautiful area here. We've put houses where have always been forested lands, open wide space. It's changed in the last 100 years of what it used to look like. And with that, there are responsibilities and obligations that we have as homeowners. So before we can even get started in understanding a lot of what we're going to talk about, we need to take a step back into history. So the topics we're going to cover is the history on wildfire, the lessons learned from LA, some of the sciences, the shift in the paradigm, which I'll talk about, what we need to do as responsible homeowners, what do we need to do as a community, what is Woodside Fire doing, and where do we go from here? So this QR code, if you can all take advantage, because we're not going to be able to watch all of this, but I wanted to bring this it's a movie. It's a YouTube movie. It's 26 minutes long. It's called Design for Disaster. This movie is based on a fire in 1961 that happened in LA. It was the Brentwood fire, Bel Air. And that is near where the Palisades fire was. And this happened in 1961. I cannot stress to you the amount of information that this movie had. I learned more from it about wildfires than I have in the last couple of years of studying wildfires now. They knew so much information back then, and it is astonishing to me that we haven't learned from that or have taken steps more seriously to where we are now. It's like we're starting steps now, whereas we should have been starting 60 years ago. So the actor William Conrad narrates this movie. I'm just going to start it. We'll see if the sound works. We're just going to watch the first few minutes of it. If it works, let's try it out.
Design for Disaster. The story of the Bel Air conflagration.
Are you all able to hear that?
Santa Ana. Indians named it Santana, the devil wind. When it blows, plants wither, trees and brush become crackling dry, atmosphere grows tense, oppressive. People tire easily, argue more. Even the suicide rate rises during the months of the Santa Ana. Warm, dry. This climate plays an important part in attracting over 3,000 people a month to the city of Los Angeles to become permanent residents. You settle into hotels, apartments, homes along the coast, inland throughout the central residential sections to the far reaches of the valley area. And some move up to the scenic, secluded hill areas, where lush California vegetation softens the ridges and valleys for miles in every direction, and breezes blow clean through native growth. And increasingly strong during the late fall months of the Santa Ana, and dangerously dry when there has been no rain. It is during this unstable period that firemen most fear the potential. The potential of 134 square miles of thick, dry chaparral and oak, all within the city boundaries of Los Angeles, classed by experts as the fastest burning brown cover in the Western Hemisphere. Nestled in that cover, one of the greatest concentrations of high-value homes in America. A serious problem in fire protection under even the best of conditions. On the morning of November 6, 1961, fire department dispatchers find conditions far from the best. Santa Ana winds are strong, gusty. Humidity and moisture content of the brush, rock bottom. Fire danger, extreme. At 8:03 a.m., a condition of high hazard is declared throughout the department. Standby companies are moved up to stations near brush areas to strengthen the circle of protection. But even as they move, trouble strikes. At 8:15, an alert of fire is relayed to the officer in command of mountain firefighting unit.
Mountain Patrol and all units concerned. They reported brush fire in the mountain area, 3600 block Stone Canyon.
The division chief responds immediately. Clouds of brush smoke are already visible on the ridge. The chief calls for additional companies. The fire, starting from its point of origin north of Mulholland on Stone Canyon, spreads out along canyon walls in 3 directions. First arriving units succeed in stopping it on the north, east, and west flanks before it reaches threatened homes. There is no stopping it on the south. Winds are driving the flames fast and hard toward Mulholland. The chief declares a condition of major emergency. The master plan of defense against a serious brush fire begins. Support from air tankers requested. 15 additional engine companies roll out. All key personnel are alerted and special mountain firefighting equipment dispatched. Deputy and division chiefs move up to take command of field units as radio messages crackle in.
The fire is over the top. It's heading straight down Stone Canyon. In 31, 45, 46, and 67 move directly into the fire.
Fire has jumped Mulholland at the crest of the Santa Monica, headed toward Bel Air. To these men, brush fires are routine, but this one is pushing them hard. The flames take a run along the canyon slopes, heading uphill for the ridges. Firemen with high-pressure hose streams.
So I just wanted to show I wanted to show just a few minutes just to get an idea of an introduction. It's a great film. You learn a lot about why the house is burned, about what the winds did. I pause it here because there was a scene where you could see the hose stream of water. Well, I've had people ask, well, it started, the fire that just happened, the Palisades and Eaton fire, they started really small and they had fire people that were there with hoses. Why didn't it go out? Well, when winds are really hard, I don't know if you've ever tried pouring anything in the air, but what does the wind do with any kind of liquid when you put your hose out? It just blows your hose stream with it. Well, this type of magnitude of fire, that's exactly what the hose streams, it's not going anywhere. It's not doing anything. So in any wildfire, all we can do, firefighters, it doesn't matter how many firefighters we have. It doesn't matter how much water we have. There's no amount of water that is going to put out a fire. Fire's going to do what it needs to do. The thing that we do is we try to contain it. We try to keep it from getting bigger, and that's creating fuel breaks. That is why defensible space is important. We're looking for areas that we can slow down the fire and be able to control it. So this was a great movie that really depicts that and shows about construction and defensible space. So I very much encourage you all to watch that when you have a chance. Okay.
Is that QR code in this pamphlets that we have?
I am not sure, but this is this will be on our website as well. So if you go to Woodside Fire's website, you'll be able to watch it from there.
The pamphlet you have is emergency contact information. It's not the same as this code.
Just close out of here. Why would it exit? All of a sudden buttons don't want to work. There we go. I can go back if you all want to see. Let me bring up the code for you. There we go. Oh. Share. All right, now you should, there we go. Okay. Okay, and, oh, let me get out of this. We wanted, there we go. Okay, so that's the QR code. So you can all scan with your phones. I'll give you a couple seconds to do that. All right. So an important thing to also know in our history is actually learning a little bit of our history of wildfires. Every year, I always find it interesting to hear the media saying, this is the worst fire we've ever had. Well, we've had worse fires every year in our history of California. But they didn't really start getting really bad until the 2017 Tubbs fire that hit. And we started to lose lives in a lot more structures. Since then, every year we have had, almost every year, we have had some pretty catastrophic fires. They're pretty consistent. Our worst one was in 2018, the Camp Fire. It's amazing what happens and how the limelight depicts the Palisades as being one of the most catastrophic. But it's because, well, in my opinion, it's because of the value of the homes that were lost. And really, not many lives were lost. One life is too many. But when we go to the Camp Fire, where it burned more, way more than Palisades, the Camp Fire burned 153,000 acres, and we lost 85 lives, a lot more. But we didn't get the kind of media attention that the Palisades did, which is sad. But I bring it up because every fire is serious. Doesn't matter where it is, doesn't matter the value. Everyone's home is a value, and everyone's lives are a value, which is why this matter is something that we take serious. And it is why the fire department, the towns, everywhere, we're trying to do as much as we can to educate and make homeowners aware of the things that you need to do and the steps you need to take to start preparing yourself, your home, and your property. So these are your lessons learned. We're just going to go over some of the information captured by some researchers. Thank you to Yana Yalachovich. She is a researcher. She actually was down in LA with some researchers from IBHS. That's the Institute for Business Housing. And they did great studies looking at houses. They looked at 50 homes, and they looked at why certain houses stood while the ones right next to them didn't. And it's very interesting to see the perspective, and it actually confirms what they have been saying and what they have been studying and research as to why. So one of the things they saw, so in these pictures I'm showing you, let me get my, this is a house that is still standing. That's this house. This is the side of it where it's exposed to this house that completely burned down. You could see it's completely gone, but this one is still standing. The fence burnt just in between and the posts. This is a close-up of these windows that were exposed to that. We'll go into sciences later, but when there's a fire next door, it causes a lot of radiant heat. Sometimes it's not the embers. If you have structures close to each other, it's more of a radiant heat, which will ignite the next house next to you. And if there's anything that's burnable around that area, that's what it's going to find as fuel to burn. So it did find its fence. It burned all that. The stucco siding, which was great. The vents they had were of 1/8 inch vent size, which is the vent size that we have been recommending that came out of research, was the vent size you should have because it protects the embers from flying into your structure. This window was a tempered window. Another type of window that we recommend is at the highest level that you'd want to have for resistance for radiant heat. This picture doesn't show it, but other houses that I saw in the research, you could see cracks in the windows, which was, the windows did what it was designed to do. It took the heat, it absorbed it, it kept it from getting in the house, even though the window cracked. It's kind of like a vehicle accident, right? Your cars are made to crunch because it's absorbing impact. The window does the same thing. When it cracks, it's because it's taking on so much radiant heat, but it's still doing its job. It's absorbing that heat. And then you'll see here, these are the vent screens, 1/8 inch under the roof lines that they have in there. And that kept it from getting into that, that attic space or above the living floor area. Uh-oh. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, lasers. Yes, please.
I have a house that has a 1/4 inch wire mesh foundation vents, and I'm looking at reducing that to 1/8 inch. do I need to pull out those vents and put in new vents? Or is it equally effective to put another layer over what I have?
You could put another layer over what you have, but it's recommended to actually just put in the eighth because you still want venting. You still want air circulation. 1 second. For some reason, every time I think the computer just doesn't like me today. I've never had so many issues with it. Okay, let's go back to sharing. The question that was asked was she wanted to know if her vents don't meet the 1/8 requirement. So you have something larger. Can you just overlay the 1/8 on it? You can do that, but it's recommended to actually remove and replace with the 1/8 because then you're really restricting. You still need airflow. You still want the airflow through your house. Never had so many challenges doing this before. It's just on a mind of its own. This is as quick as the presentation goes. Thank you very much. Have a nice day. I have no idea. Let me just turn it off and turn it back on and see. Can't open. Good thing we have. Thanks, bear with me. I've never seen something like that before. That's a new one. It is a, yeah, it's like the mouse is doing that. That is the first slide. That's very strange, but it won't go into presentation mode. Okay. Well, let's just work with that for a while. Let's let it calm down. That's interesting. Okay. The next thing that was found was garbage cans. They saw lots of garbage cans and they could see where the heat was building up. And there was one thing they noticed was, so if you look to the picture on the left, they knew that garbage cans were dragged from there. So sometimes the firefighters didn't have a lot of time to do a lot of mitigating to protect homes. So sometimes they just did small things that they could to hope that it would be enough to protect structures. So in the picture to the left, there was heat that was building up. Firefighters pulled the cans and dragged them out to the streets so that at least that took that fuel load away. So this house had great, you could see it's zone 0. The vegetation doesn't start out. It's further away from the house. But those garbage can receptacles that are against it, they moved it. And you could see how it was already melting in the pictures next to it. So they just dragged it out to the street and they left the ones that was melting. So it was enough because that's the thing with the fires, embers, anything that's burning, it's looking for that fuel source and it'll just keep burning till it gets hot enough. You'd be surprised what one garbage can will do to an entire structure. I don't know if you're familiar, but Millbrae, maybe about 6 years ago, the Millbrae Rec Center burnt down. And even though it was kids that caused the fire, it was through a garbage can that was still burning and it was right in the corner of the structure. And that got up into the eaves and the whole building burned just from that. So small things can cause big damage. A big thing that they brought up was connective fuels. Connective fuels meaning things that can burn that create a candle wick to the structure. So anything that connects to each other, it's like a chain reaction. One leads to the next, leads to the next, to the next. They found a lot of correlations in connective fuels all over LA. With all the houses they looked at, that was one of the biggest contributing factors to all the houses that burned down as opposed to the ones that didn't, was through connective fuels. So you could see the house in the middle. There's those 2 arrows. Those 2 burnt down on both sides of it. That house was still standing, no damage. But look at the house. If you look at the house, they have no vegetation next to their structure. I mean, it's completely cleared. So this is just evidence that keeps confirming what research has been finding. It works, which is why we have all our zone 0s and the home hardening. It's as small, it's windows, vents, your siding, and that defensible space, that vegetation. Here's another example of a connective fuel. We don't really put a lot of thoughts to it, but hot tubs, because they melt, that creates enough heat that if you don't have the right size vents, that heat gets through those vents, and depending on what you have on the other side of those vents, that'll start to burn, or if it gets into your eaves. Windows are very vulnerable. Windows are extremely vulnerable if they're single pane. They just give out. They give out at heat so quickly. And once the fire gets into your house, it's done. There's nothing that you can do to protect the inside of your structure. That's why the exterior is so important. They also saw another example of connective fuels so this was a house that had mulch, all the tan bark and stuff in their little courtyard. Well, in the corner, that mulch, show the points, my pointer here. This right here, it's interesting. You could see the burn pattern already, the heat. Well, it wasn't that it was burning. It was the heat climbed up the wall, and there was enough heat that it got through one of these little openings right here, which was where the garage was. And it got into the garage, and you can see all this dark area here. That's the side where it came in, all that heat, and created all that damage all in here. So it was enough heat to get into the garage, and because of what was in the garage, that all burned. So that's another example of connective fuels. Here was a close call. This was interesting to see. So we have a house that was completely destroyed, house next door still standing. The fence is non-combustible. There's that 6 feet that we've been pushing it a lot to people, is recommending that if you have a wooden fence, at least the first 6 feet that's against your house, if it's touching your house, should be of something that's non-combustible, something that doesn't burn. But that's what saved this house. It had no way to keep communicating the fire through that fence. The rest of it was wood, but that little bit was all iron, and it didn't continue that candle wick to the house. You could see the dark smoke on the wall on the stucco. It was taking on heat, so you could see there was a lot of heat being produced, but not enough for that structure to just be destroyed. So when they were in LA, they kept looking at pathways for damage to structures. What are the pathways that fires are finding their ways into burning down structures? Connective fuels was the big one. So they're looking at window vulnerability, and then they're looking at what vegetation was around it. The vegetation that's right under the window. It's a perfect example of the removal of vegetation from your window, because the window is vulnerable. It gives an entry point. The vegetation can burn hot enough where it will create enough heat for that window to finally give out, and then the fire gets in and your house is done. So in Paradise, this is the correlation with Paradise and the LA fires. In Paradise, they found that the radiant heat was a big factor for damaged homes. Because in Paradise, houses were so close together, and that's why you would see pictures. All those gray, if you can see, sorry, it's small now, but there's little gray spots in between these trees. And all those gray spots are all houses that have been burned to the ground. And that is from the radiant heat, but that's because there was a lot of vulnerabilities, and that's how the fire got in and destroyed these houses. And there's a little chart here. It shows about fire damage. 63% of damaged homes were from radiant heat. There was a small percentage, less than 10, were from direct ember ignition. They had flame indirect ember ignition was about 30%. And then flame fuel connectivity was around 10%. And then they had another one that was unknown, was around 10%. And that was for the percentage of damaged homes. This one is an example. It was nice for them to put a spin on the research of saying how details matter. So with this house, you could see it's still standing. The vegetation in front melted, burned, whatever they had out there. But the house had tempered glass windows. It had a zone 0, and it didn't have any connective fuels. So that pathway was interrupted. So it didn't get to the house. So that's why this structure is still standing. Little things help. So quickly, the fence on the left, firefighters, because they don't have time, they just kicked in as much as they could of the fence, just hoping that it was enough that the fire wouldn't have enough fuel to keep making its way to the house. It worked, it did its due, the house is still standing. And then the gate next to it is another example of firefighters cutting to create that separation. So it would disconnect that pathway of the fire leading up to that house. So it's those little things that make a difference. Example of non-combustible walls and vegetation. So in this one, you'll see the house next door is burned, but the house next to it isn't. They have that wall that was built that separates the two houses. That wall protected. It took all the heat that was coming from the house that was destroyed. So another example of how that's important, that separation. So a little bit of the science. I feel like it's important. We've got history. Those were the lessons learned. That's the main part of what they learned when they did those 50 homes in LA. There's a lot of other details. We can go a long time, but we don't have that much time to go into it. But I wanted to just hit the highlights. It's important for you to also understand the why. A lot of times when we ask residents or people in general to do things, you know, it's not that we are saying because we're the fire department and we want you to do these things. There's always a reason why, but it always takes that time to educate people the why of everything. So just to give you a little idea of the science behind fires and why we do things, what we ask you to do. There's 3 ingredients to a wildfire. You need fuel, ignition, and the weather is big, depending on the weather conditions. When you remove any of these things or something that we can control, that's how we can eliminate or we can manage a wildfire much better and control it. These are examples for a pathway for a fire. So we have 3. There's direct flame contact, there's embers, and there's radiant heat. So you can see the path of travel. If you have a property that has trees outside your 100 feet or even within your 100 feet, if it keeps going towards your house, the flames are going to keep going towards your house. Make no mistake, some of the photos, if you look at wildfires that have happened and you look at the photography, you'll see the houses all flat to the ground. Do you notice the vegetation around are still these trees standing? When people ask me, that's why trees are not necessarily the problem, because many times the house ignites the trees, not the trees to the house. A lot of times it's the other way around. So the trees will long be standing long after your house burns down, put it that way, because of the amount of combustible fuel that we have in our homes. So we have the direct contact, then we have the embers. So embers can fly for many miles. 3, we've even seen them run for 4 to 5 miles, depending on wind driven. Those embers will fly, they stop at your house, and they fall because your house is like a wall. And what's it gonna hit? It's gonna hit everything in zone 0, which is why that vegetation is really important to not have any. Then you have the radiant heat. That's going to be, as we've seen, what's happened in the Palisade fires in the LA, a lot of houses next to each other, they're taking on the heat, but they didn't have those vulnerabilities, so they withstood that radiant heat. That's why, so home hardening, defensible space, they work together. People have asked, well, which one's more important? Which one should I do? They really work well together. But the important thing is we start creating a plan to where we can start, and we'll talk about that. This is just another view. I thought this was another nice way of looking at how fire pathways and transitions happen, because it's showing you how the embers fly. So you got the wind, it's pushing the embers are flying, it's igniting house. That house is now ignited, but it's not the embers necessarily that are hitting the following houses now, because the first house is on fire, it's burning the next house and it's burning the next house. So again, why the home hardening is really important in these type of cases where you live close to other structures or even other structures on your parcel. So what does this mean to me? So that's a little bit of the science behind it. We need to reduce fuels to slow the fire. We have to harden our homes to prevent ignition. We need to remove those connective fuels. And when we're constructing for new construction, we need to be mindful of structure to structure, that density. It is something that I wholeheartedly, it is such a difficult challenge for any city, because state is requiring so much more housing. And then the fire department is saying, you're requiring areas, especially here in the WUI, to create more housing, and we're already dense as it is. We don't have wide roads. We are very limited to what we have, but yet you're making these requirements. We are working really hard to try to change those requirements through law. I sit on the California Legislature Committee, and we work a lot with different senators on bills. We're trying to get bills passed to make those changes because you're really setting up the cities for more disaster by this increase in housing. So since we can't do anything about it now, the important thing is as we do construct and develop is that we're mindful about structure separation. We want to have research has shown that if we can get at least 30 feet between structures, anything more than that, that's awesome. But at least 30 feet, we're looking to almost zero ignition. And I have a slide on that, on a study that IBHS did on that. So just a quick overview of all our past fire lessons, because it's not just the LA fires that we've learned this from. So the LA fires are just something new. And because there's been so many new concepts with the zone zero and everything we're learning that IBHS and other researchers like NIST have found and that they've pushed out, it's been learned from all these fires. They've been studying and have spent millions of dollars on research and utilizing these fires in our history to come up with the science and the information we have now. The LA fires were just another way of confirming what we've learned and what we need to be doing. It just confirmed that we're on the right path, and this is what we have to do to protect our structures. So this is a slide I wanted to show you. So likely damage modes at varying distances. So basically, after doing a whole bunch of research, this was the summation that it showed was the percentage of damage on distance. So houses that were, 10 feet apart from each other, you're getting 79% loss, 100% damage. You could see, so they had different percentages, but as we go further and further away, 15, 20 feet, 30 feet, 40 feet, we start to see the percentages get smaller and smaller, all the way to at 40 feet, we're looking at 100%, zero damage, zero loss. 30 feet, we're already getting smaller in loss, but we still have damage. 40 feet, we are seeing a bigger increase. So it's something to be mindful as we continue to develop and build more buildings as we need to. And it's certainly something I look at when we look at new development projects and the number of parcels that are or the number of structures on a parcel. My first thing is how far apart are these structures going to be? And I know there's one side of it which they're required, but my other side is I'm looking for that separation. It's very important. So with all that said, all the lessons learned, all the information we've gathered, I think it's become pretty clear that we're in a point in our life that we need to, it's absolutely necessary to shift our paradigms. We need to shift how we change, how we think, how we plant, how we build. It is so important for the protection of not just our homes, but our whole community. Oh, this was, by the way, the Coffee Park fire, which is part of the Tubbs fire in 2017. You see all the homes before pictures, you see all the trees, and then the after picture, every house is gone, and the trees are still there, and the bushes and the shrubs. When I was deployed out for the Paradise fire, it was my first time actually going to a wildfire. And at the time, my job was to map all the damaged areas. I'm a drone pilot, and so that was our task. But as we are driving through there and seeing the amount of destruction and animals that are running, that they're still looking for their homeowners, I mean, just the whole environment, it is something that, and it's not even my home, but it was so heartbreaking to see the amount of damage that this has done and the number of lives we've lost. And now coming here to work here has definitely brought a different, confirmation that I know that there's a lot that we need to do, and I want to be there to help support residents on your journey to make this community and protect it as much as we can. I do a lot of work with fire modeling and looking at where our vulnerabilities are just as a district, not just on a structure level, but on a community level, to see where is going to be our pathways so that we can start protecting those areas, start building some fuel breaks in our district. So there's a lot of things that I'm looking for of how we can protect the community better, but we need homeowners, we need your help too. We need your participation. You got to help us as well with the whole goal of protecting our community. So the thoughts are, we need to change our build to burn built to resist. I don't know why 1961, the big fire, Bel Air fire that happened right where the Palisades are, how come we didn't learn from that? How come we haven't learned from all the fires that have happened since then? We haven't. So I think we're finally at a turning point that we know how essential it is that we do need to start changing how we do things. So what can we do as responsible owners? I will tell you, I'm not going to show this video, but this was a great video. It'll be on our website, so you can go to our website. I'll post this presentation. It's a research study done by IBHS. They took 2 houses. They took one that's constructed just like most houses, made of wood and with vegetation around it and the eaves and everything that's normally what most houses have. Then they built a completely resistant house with all the home hardening, with the zone 0, with the smaller vents, with the right eaves. And what they found was how quickly the structure burned that was made of what normally we would see now, as opposed to the one that's non-combustible. And it was through embers. So it was through flying embers. That's what they used as their fuel source. And it was to show it was an ember generated machine that was just casting all the embers. And the embers are just flying in the air and they're just landing wherever they land. And because they sizzled out where the zone 0 is, it didn't cause damage, but you'll see what it does to the other side, which is really interesting. The other 2 pictures, we call them ember storms. So when the embers are flying through, this is what they look like. And this is when they're hitting your zone 0. And these are firefighters that are trying to do some structure protection and put out the fires that are starting, especially the little spot fires below. You could see how this house, all the little spot fires around it, those are being caused by embers and vegetation. So as responsible homeowners, we're removing connective fuels. We're removing our vegetation from zone 0. We're doing some smart landscaping. This house here, this is actually a house in our district. And they have put a lot of time and years. Actually, this isn't something that happened in the last couple of years. This has been like 15 years plus in the works. But they've done their vegetation. It's completely away from the structure. They've hardened their structure. They've done everything they possibly can. So they built with ignition resistant materials. They did some strategic planting. They have their zone 0. Big thing is maintaining your roofs. Now, we live where there's trees and leaves fall on our roofs all the time. This is not a year-round thing, but it's where we're going to be cognizant that if we're hitting warmer weathers, windier days, those are the days you want to be mindful that 1, you're clearing your roof off, and 2, that you're looking at the furniture that's on your deck or around your structure. If you're not going to be around, to bring those in or at least get the cushions off or anything that's going to burn. Because those are also sources of fuel to your house, is whatever patio furniture you have. The other thing is if your house is on a road, you want to maintain your roads. We need access and people need to get out. So we already know how limited we are on our road sizes. So we need to make sure we're keeping our clearances, width and height, for the engines to get through. And most importantly, the height is really important. We're looking to start, even though as beautiful as canopies connecting on a road are, we are causing a problem for evacuation. We are making these our evacuation routes because of those canopies connecting. If there's a fire, it's going to easily jump just through canopies, and now that evacuation route is no longer viable because of the fire that's blowing through that road. So we're looking at clearance on our roads. We're looking at maintenance on the up to the shoulders. Our ordinance requires 10 feet off the shoulders. Not removing trees. We see trees survive. It's more the limbing up, removing dead brush, laddering up all your tree limbs so that they're up. A big one is privacy hedges. I get everyone's privacy and your screens. We need to be smarter with the type of screens we're using, and definitely outside of zone 0. So if we can move those screens out 5 feet, create your screen, but choose plants that are not like these hedges. They're beautiful on the outside. They're so green. That's not what they look like on the inside. And when embers land in those, that's like you know, when you try to light a fire, you have big pieces of wood, those don't burn, but you need the kindle. Well, this is your kindle to the fire right here. These burn so fast. You won't need much more for it to burn. So be mindful of the type of plants you're using for your privacy screens. Your building materials, this is one of those things that we're talking about. Small things make a difference. Intrusion into your house is also in your garage. If you don't have your garage that seals all the way, the embers fly right underneath. They'll find any crack crevice that they can to get in. And once they're in, that's kind of it. Because we have so much storage. We have things that we store. Oh, let me go back to that. Sorry, one more thing. Also, one thing that wanted to pay attention, your structures, that first 6 inches, that's the other thing. If you look at the base of your structure, if you ever go to your structure and put your hand underneath and feel the gaps, those are some gapped openings where embers will get in. So that's where those first 6 inches from the ground, you're looking at making that something that's non-combustible, something that won't burn, but you want to protect that vulnerability because there's plywood usually right underneath. You want to protect that so that their embers aren't getting in there. So again, like I said, this isn't a home hardening workshop, but these are just important things that were found from fires is the roofs. So this is what's happening with roofs. Embers land, they land on all the debris. It's not so much just your roof, but everything where if you watch wind, you watch your leaves fly, you know where your leaves usually collect on your property. You know where they just end up sitting. Well, that's kind of the casting of the embers. So the roof to wall, your gutters, really important. The gutter cleaning is huge because that's kindling too. All the leaves and dry debris that get caught in your gutters, that's huge. That's going to just burn and go and take the rest of your house. Coffee Park, that was a great example. They had a lot of those connective fences. There's a lot of areas in the district that have fence to house, fence to house, fence to house, and they're all connected. Well, all it takes is the beginning of one, and it's just going to take all the houses that are with it. The bottom of the screen, this was a study at IBHS. What they did was these are vent openings that are more than an 1/8 inch thick. That's where the 1/8 inch came in, is they kept studying sizes of vents to see when it was that vents were actually working. And if you look, this is one where they penetrated because the vents were still large. But that's how the embers fly into your vents. They get in, and whatever you have in your attic, it's going to burn that. Most people have storage in there, but even if you didn't, if it's just plywood, it'll sit over time and start burning on that plywood. And again, the fence is important, that fence connection. Can't stress the fences enough. So we always recommend starting from the house and working your way outwards. I like this image because it kind of gives you an idea of your priorities by color. So it's just a nice reference guide to know where to start. Where should I start? So these are your lowest priorities, are your greens. Your orange and reds is where you want to start. And that's just a good way to kind of start coming up with the plan of how to attack the vulnerabilities of your structure. A lot of people bring up cost. Headwaters Economic did a big study and they were looking at costs because people are talking about, well, if I'm using all this non-combustible material, if I'm changing how I'm building, it's going to cost me a ton of money. So here's what they found. You could see some of these numbers. I'll leave this here for a minute because there's a lot on there. But basically, they found that the construction on an average cost, average price, was only $2,800 more than what you would normally be paying for types of materials. So it wasn't god awfully, $100,000. Now, if you're going for all the nice stuff, higher, like on the highest end stuff, that'll change it, which they did bring that up. So if you wanted to go optimum wildfire, $18,200 in Northern California. Southern was $27,000. I didn't realize Southern would be that much more expensive, but it was. So this was just an interesting study that came out of it for costs. Kind of gives us a point of reference on where we stand and what things will cost. Kind of helps with budgeting as well. I always use this slide because I feel like it's important. I think residents should be well aware of what happens when there is a wildfire because it just gives you an idea of why defensible space is important. So during a wildfire, our engines will be on the front line working that fire. We are going to be asking for support. A lot of engines from all over, Redwood, Menlo Park, other states, Southern California, Northern Cal, everywhere is going to be coming. When they come, they're going to be assessing areas. And this is a placard that they use. They put it on a tree, a mailbox, whatever identifies that property. And that's how they grade if your house is going to be a house they protect or a house they're just going to say, this one's gone. We're not going to even spend our time here. And there's 4 things that they look at. Well, one is, of course, if there's occupants. That's always the first thing. They're looking for people. People are there. They're going to try and convince them to leave. But the other things are water. What's their access and source of water? And I'll touch on that in a minute because I know people are going to ask me that. They look at defensible space. Now, it's important to remember defensible space is not just to slow a fire. It's not just to remove that connective fuel to your house. It's also for firefighter operations. One, so if we do have aircrafts that are dropping chemicals, extinguishing chemicals, it gives them space to fall to the ground because there's a lot of ground fuel. So we need that extinguishing chemical to reach the ground. If there's tons of trees and brush and everything, it's going to stay up there. It's never going to reach the bottom. So it doesn't really do a lot of good. So that's one reason for defensible space on the operations side. The other side is it gives firefighters a safe place to stand and fight. They need to be able to fight and protect, but you got to give them a space to do it. If there's too many trees and vegetation around, that's not going to be a good spot for them. They're not going to stay there. It's also in case the wildfire front's coming too fast, they need space to be able to deploy their shelters and be somewhat protected. There's a bunch of vegetation around them. They're not going to be able to do that there. And the last thing is access. How easy is your property accessible, which is why driveway clearance is important. Keeping your vegetation along your driveway. It's required by ordinance for it to be 5 feet of mitigated clearance, not cut to the ground, just maintenance, trees limbed up, dry vegetation removed. So that's what that encompasses. But this is what they would be using. So to touch on the water really quick, hydrants have been placed here for structure fires, or vehicle fires. The intention of a hydrant was never for a wildfire because there's no water on earth that will put one out. It will drain the system. It was made for structure fires. Also to have an understanding, which is why the defensible space and home hardening is important. You need to think about your house surviving without firefighters ever making it to your house to protect it, because it takes a lot of resources. Just one house, when we have one single structure fire right now, we get them a lot. But one structure fire, we get 4 engines, 1 truck, and 2 battalion chiefs. That's a lot of people right there. That's our fire district. We don't even have that. We have 3 engines. We don't even have a truck. We get it from Redwood City or Menlo Park. We get another battalion chief from Menlo Park or Redwood City, and our 1 battalion chief that's on duty. And that's for one single structure. And that's if it's a basic fire. If that structure gets bigger where it's completely involved and maybe threatening the house next door, now we get another 4 engines, another truck, and another battalion chief. But we're almost getting through half of the county by then. And that's for 2 houses. So imagine in a wildfire, we've got 10, 15 houses. We're tapped out before we even get to house number 4. We're already calling out the whole county and then getting other resources. So it does take a lot, and it's important to remember. That's why the defensible space home hardening is important. You want your home to survive without us being there. What can we do as a community? We've kind of been talking about the roads. So you could see some of the work that was done here. These are some before and after pictures of what properties have done to maintain. You could see how we've got overgrown, and now we've got good clearance. And then people who have large lots, that's also part of the mitigation work that needs to get done. And what is Woodside Fire doing? What are we not doing? I can't even keep track. So we do a lot of right-of-way work. We do right-of-way work for the town of Portola Valley. We do it for Woodside. We haven't contracted with Woodside yet. Maybe it's something that'll happen in the future, but right now, Woodside Fire does all the right-of-way work and private lands for the town of Portola Valley. We work with open space and parks. We are very much working. Part of my initiative for this year is to call back all our private lands, all our landowners, like our large, Mid-Peninsula and county parks, and asking them for their reports for the mitigation work that they are required to do, that they say they do, and now we're looking for proof on that. so that we can start enforcing on what they're not doing. We do a lot of work with PG&E. We partner with them with removal of vegetation on power lines. I know that's a whole separate subject. We do not always help with that. We try to, because at least we know when we do it, we take the debris with us. We don't leave it behind. We know PG&E contracts with a lot of third-party companies that they'll cut all the debris and get it out of the lines, but it stays on your property. And I know that that's an issue, and I wish we could do more to help with that. We're trying to figure out how we can help homeowners with that. We also do the annual chipping program. So this year we launched a new asking for resident help, and the new was to make a reservation in advance. The dates didn't change. The dates are the same. Whatever dates you've been used to, the chippers coming through, it stayed the same. What we're asking is for people to make a reservation, and this is why. Our crews come out on a Sunday on their time off to drive the route to see where the piles are, so that they can notate how many piles are out, and they know how they're going to position the trucks. So when they come through, they know if they're going to be downhill, uphill, depending on the slopes. That's one reason. By you making a reservation, you're kind of helping eliminate that part. The other part with the reservation is now we're getting data entry. Instead of us manually having to do all this data entry when we're done of the day or the few days with all the parcels that participated, because you're preloading our system, our software system, when the chipper crew goes by, they're able to enter size of the pile, how much they chipped. So now we're getting accurate data for how much is being chipped on cubic yards. And that's great, especially if you're a FireWise community, because now we can tell you this much was chipped in your community for FireWise. But it also works on a state level. So we're part of a Ready, Set, Go program, and we report as best as we can in estimating. Now we won't have to estimate. Now we'll have good data and statistics. So those are some of the major reasons as to why we ask for those reservations. This year, we know it's a transitional period, so we're asking homeowners to help us with that. Next year, we hope that we have almost 100% of homeowners doing it. It takes 5 minutes to do, doesn't take very long. It's even interactive. So when you go in to set your reservation, let's say your house faces this street, but your pile you usually put on the back of your property. You can take a picture, or you could drag this little icon on there that drops a pin exactly to where your pile is, so that we know where it is and we know where to pick up for you. Or you can put a picture there. It's very interactive in that way if you need it to be more exact on your location of your piles. So that's with the chipping program. We also do the annual home assessments. We are almost for Woodside. We're probably between 700 and 800 home assessments have been completed so far. We would like to have been almost through the whole 2,000, but it's really difficult for the inspectors to know when people are going to be home. When you're not home, we do leave a door hanger. We are really, really asking homeowners to please call us and schedule your home assessment so we can get moving on to the next part of our district. We're still in zones 1, 2, 3, and 4. And those 4 zones are Woodside Hills and Woodside Heights, Emerald Hills and Woodside and Redwood, Emerald Hills, Woodside and Redwood City, and Woodside North. So those are the 4 areas that we're still in for this year. We're supposed to start on in the other end of Portola Valley this year. And then next year would be the rest of Woodside, which would be the Glens, Woodside South, Woodside North, Woodside West, Bear Gulch, Skywood, and then the rest is Portola Valley. But we were hoping to get to them this year so we can be on time for next year. But we know that this is a slow transition. This is new. People are getting used to it. But we are asking for residents to please call us to schedule these inspections. I also do a fire marshal safety corner at different times of different months. I will post on our website that it's going to be, let's say at Roberts, or it's going to be somewhere in town. And I do it throughout the district where I'll do a specific topic and answer people's questions on specific topics and help just have that resident engagement. I also do a lot of workshops on home hardening defensible space specifically. I did a lot on the ordinance when that first came out, just so people were getting an understanding of how the ordinance works. And then we want you to take advantage of any incentive programs around that are available to you. I did want to touch back on one more thing with the workshops. Please go to our website. I have at the end a QR code and you'll see it. I'll point it out to you. We really want to get people to be signed up with our e-notifications. That's where we'll announce when we are having events and workshops, and you know where they are, when they are. For the Fire Marshal Safety Corner, we'll post that. We put out a monthly newsletter, and that newsletter is also that gets put out to residents. So if you could please go to our website and register. We're trying to get as many residents as possible. It's our key communication on what's going on within the district or what we think is important that you should be aware about. So where do we go from here? Came across some really cool things. So first, just really quick, these are the highlights. Home hardening, defensible space, fire smart plants. This actually used to say fire resistive plants, I think was the wording. I'm not a fan of the resistive because there is no such thing. All plants burn. They all burn, just takes different types of ignition points. It's kind of like everything burns, like paper. Paper burns at 451 degrees auto ignition itself. So, I mean, everything reaches a point that it finally burns. So, smart plants. So, we want to make sure we're doing that. That's preparing your house and your property. But let's also remember we need to prepare ourselves. So, you want to have an evacuation, get your home ready, your animals. This information is all from CAL FIRE's website, Ready for Wildfire. They have really upped their game on information to residents, CAL FIRE has, and it's Ready for Wildfire. Great place to go to for resources. Also, my other favorite spot that I get a lot of information because they had a measure that passed and got like $23 million, Fire Safe Marin. Go to their website. They will tell you all sorts of tips and tricks on landscaping, plants, everything you want to know about home hardening defensible space. They have absolutely fantastic resources. This is something new I came across, and I wanted to make sure I let you all know. So CAL FIRE has created this fire planner. Basically what it does, when you go to it, you create an account. It'll customize according to what your current standards of what your house is right now. It'll help you create a plan for home hardening and defensible space and evacuation. Really great tool. I highly suggest it. And it's something new. I just happened to be surfing around and I said, oh, this is kind of new. They create a whole checklist for you to follow, which is really great. I put the QR code up there for you so that if you wanted to just take a quick shot of it. But again, it'll be on our website. I wanted to highlight our FireWise communities. So we are up to 12 in the entire fire district. I showed there's the ones I notated what's in Woodside. When I first started 2 years ago in Woodside, for Woodside Fire, there were only 4 FireWise communities. So it is amazing that 8 more have been added since then. I will say it's a process. Some places it's taken them 8 to 10 months to be done, and it's not because of them. But the state is so backlogged on reviewing applications that they will just review. And if there's one thing wrong with it, they kick it back for you to fix it. They don't even review the rest of it. So they're looking at really pushing them out really quick. So it is a process to be patient with, but it is, again, it is worth it to become FireWise. It is how you as a community can connect together and build this relationship and build a safer community together. Kind of helps keep each other accountable as well, and you can partner through the whole process. So it's a great community to be a part of. And here's my last slide with resources. So these are all the QR codes. John is going to be talking about more, but that Stay Informed WFPD QR code, that's the one that you want to go to that'll take you to our e-notification page. But again, like I said, this will be on our website. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Kim. So are there any questions for Kim? We'll take some questions and then we'll take a quick break and then back to John.
Yes, it is on our, I'll post it to our website. It is available online. That was the question. Oh, it's Marin Fire Safe. So the question was, what was the fire safe I was referring to? And that's Marin Fire Safe, their website. You just type in Marin Fire Safe, you'll get their website. It'll come right up. Any other questions? Yes.
So is a Firewise community now?
They're not all of Woodside, just areas of Woodside are Firewise. So the question was if all of Woodside was Firewise, and it's not.
Checked with State Farm on my homeowner's insurance, and they're already documented that my property is Firewise.
So the,
Areas, so there's certain areas.
correct. So the question was, or the comment was that this young lady's insurance was saying that her property is already in a Firewise community, and it could be that it is. So if you go to Firewise's website, and it's on our site, but NFPA is who runs Firewise. So if you go to NFPA Firewise, you can actually put in your address and it'll tell you if you're in a Firewise community. And it's also on our website. So I have a page that's Firewise, and I have that information, that link that takes you there so that you could check your address and see if you're in a Firewise. But that does help for your insurance. I've heard from a lot of people, it's helped them with their insurance discounts and everything. Yes.
I live on a street where there's only one exit out, and I'm wondering if there's any effort to try and create second exits for all communities.
The question was living on a street that only has one single ingress and egress route, only one way in and out, if there are plans to create a secondary road. Currently, no. We would have to, that's not up to us. We have to look at future developments. If there's going to be, kind of depends on where you live. Sometimes topography, mountains, all those different things become a costly way of getting a second way in or out. So yes, there's currently no plans for that, which is why it's important we look at how we take care of those one-way ins and outs. Is a lot of that mitigation on those roads to make sure that we keep them open. Any other questions? I just want to say one last comment before I turn it over to John. I know that when we come out and do your assessment, sometimes people have been very fearful of us coming out because you're thinking of a time clock starting, or also about the laundry list that you may be facing of things that need to be done. I just want to explain to you that we know that there's a lot of work to be done on properties, and we don't expect anything to be done. What we do expect is that something starts to get done, and we'll work together in creating a plan as you start making that progress. That time clock of timeline, so in the ordinance, it says 12 months as long as you're making progress. It's in there because we had to put some kind of enforcement for the people who just don't do anything. I'm sure we've all seen these, people always talk about, oh, my neighbor doesn't do anything, all that kind of stuff. Well, it's really for neighbors that it kind of puts a fire under their butts to get something done because it's their responsibility. So, but for the majority of people, we haven't had that issue. We have people who want to do what they need to do, and we'll work with you. The best analogy I can give is when you've done nothing for so long, the list is super long. But when you've been keeping up a little bit at a time, when we come through and we tell you all the things you need to do, the list is a lot smaller because you've been proactively doing things. Kind of like studying for an exam when you were in school. Remember way back when you were in school, the type of person, were you a person who crammed the night before? Or were you a person during the school year who studied and did their work so that when finals came, you didn't really have enough to review because you had been preparing all this time? I look at this the same way. What kind of person are you? Are you one who crams? Or are you one who's been steadily working and planning so that when it comes to that day, you're more prepared and it's not as complicated? If you're one that crams, we're still here to help you. We want to help you develop a plan so that you're no longer cramming, so that you're now taking steps and reaching that goal. Thank you all. Oh, yes, you have another question.
Not enough time to discuss it, but do you have any information outside of this meeting about sprinklering outside?
So the question was about exterior sprinklers. We don't have anything on that because we don't regulate that. We have no opinion on it. We've seen some of the systems work. There's some systems out of Australia that have been very successful. There are a lot of systems out there. The only thing that we recommend is if you are going to put one in, is that it has its own water source and its own power source. And hey, do whatever you can to protect your property. We're happy to come out, and if it's a product that you're thinking about, we're happy to come out and consult with you and give you what we know about certain products and look at the things that we would see as maybe, hey, maybe this product isn't as good as this one or whatever, because we can see what those failure points are. So we're happy to do that as well, just to help support the homeowner if that's a direction you want to go in. Any other questions? Okay. Oh, one more.
Sorry, Kim, are you the person to ask about the town ordinance that says that you can't sell a house unless it's fire is approved?
Oh, so for real estate. So yes, within our local ordinance, so AB 38 is an assembly bill that's been around for a while. And within our local ordinance, we have AB 38 kind of doesn't really matter, because in our ordinance, for any real estate property that is being sold, it's required to comply with defensible space requirements as outlined in our ordinance. When the buyer and the seller enter a contract, between the two of them, they have to decide who is going to be the one who's going to be responsible for compliance. They have a year from escrow to be in compliance. They can split it. They can do whatever they want. Doesn't matter to us as long as it gets done. You're welcome. Yes, sir. So there are different incentive programs through the, not through the district, like Los Trancos has an incentive program. Woodside has a matching fund program. So if you go to Town of Woodside's website, there's information on that. Yes, ma'am. So that's an ongoing project. We have been working a lot. We've removed a ton, thanks to 2 fire marshals ago, Denise Ania, who was the fire marshal. She is now heads the San Mateo County Fire Safe Council. She is constantly getting grants and working grants, and that's why a lot of our eucalyptus trees have been removed. I mean, there's so many, and they are costly. She also has worked with, so San Mateo County, she gets some grant money that helps distribute through the county. She's used some of that for different areas of our district to be able to put them through mitigation efforts, and eucalyptus trees have been one of them. So it is an ongoing, we're constantly looking for funding to be able to keep removing those from the right-of-ways. So the question was the eucalyptus trees on Sand Hill. If it's on Sand Hill property, we can't do much with that. The only thing we do, so with anybody, doesn't matter if it's Stanford or not, the only thing we look at is making sure that they maintain the eucalyptus trees. We've seen eucalyptus trees, they're not necessarily, a complete problem until they actually burn, but what leads to them burning is all their leaves and all their foliage. If you got to keep up with the maintenance with it to reduce that hazard. So that's the only thing we can do is make sure they keep up with the maintenance of those. Yes. Apps. Yes. So the comment was Sonoma County and how important maintenance is on eucalyptus trees. It is. It makes a world of a difference, but it is a lot of maintenance. Yes, to John. Question online.
Go ahead, Nina. You can unmute yourself.
What do you recommend doing with wooden decks?
So the question is, what do we do with wooden decks? So wooden decks are fine. If you've ever seen wood burn in a horizontal direction, it's very difficult. What gets decks burning is what's underneath it. So if you have a deck that's more than 3 feet in height, you want to enclose the deck, whether it's by screening, small screening, so embers don't fly in and get underneath, because most people, they're not going to be crawling on their hands and knees to clean out underneath the deck. So enclosing that, or if it's more than that, then it's not a problem, you blow it out. So it's what's underneath the deck, and also the combustible materials on your deck. Carpets into your house, brooms, furniture, those are the things that get your deck to burn that leads to your house. So the deck isn't really the problem, it's what we have on it and under it. It does, but it has to have that Class A rating. So it, depending on the material, that's what we look at as the rating and the flame spread. I will love to take more questions. I want to give John his opportunity, but I will be here even when everything's done for those of you who have more questions. Thank you, everybody.
Good. John, you've got the microphone.
That was bizarre. I've never seen that.
Down in the bottom down here.
Oh, I've experienced, I did a presentation once up at Alice's.
Oh, right.
And none of the
Right here. We'll
electronics
just
worked.
keep
All of
the
a sudden I
mouse
was like,
right there,
okay,
and
I
then
guess
just
I'm waiting the whole presentation.
click
Here we
here.
go.
Okay. Well, good afternoon. Thank you all for coming. I really want to thank Kim for a great presentation, talking about all the important stuff involved in trying to keep our houses from burning and communities safe. Let me introduce myself. I'm John Middleman. I grew up around here, and when I left here to go to college, I joined the volunteer fire department, and I've been involved with the fire service basically ever since, the last 20-odd years when I was in New England. And so I've seen it from the other side, and all the factors that Kim has spoken about are very relevant. Basically, what I'm here in my role as chair of emergency preparedness and co-chair of WPV Ready is really to communicate the, how you can take care of yourself. And this is what we're all about, is helping the communities protect themselves. So this is, we're talking about notification, the tools used for notification, and that's where a lot of the QR codes, I had them on a sheet back there to download the various phone apps as well as the websites. It's important to realize that Woodside Fire does post on social media. The social media, the way things are posted social media is not always in a timely way, and is also often there to get most clicks, so that the most dangerous stuff is posted. So it's not always the best place. That's why we wanted to do this presentation to show stuff. So there's several pieces: the iPause, SMC Alert, Genesis Protect, Watch Duty, and then MyShake. So iPause is an interesting system. We've been around. I think it's part of what we've known since we were kids, when nuclear war was, a threat. And I remember that was a big issue when I was growing up here. But FEMA manages it now. We'll have to see how that develops with funding cuts. But basically, the important thing is that it will broadcast alerts both by over your phone, if you remember that tsunami alert that we all got, right? As well as over the airways, and also the weather radio. That's the other way they communicate. So the important thing to realize is that even though FEMA has sort of organized this, the activations will come from the Woodside Fire Protection District locally through San Mateo County Emergency Response. So it will be generated locally. And information will include the type of incident, the areas being evacuated, and possible road closures. Now, no subscription is needed unless if you've got your phone so toned down so that it won't get any alerts from anybody. You might need to go in and check something on your settings. But in general, you don't need to do anything to get an iPause alert. Now, SMC alert, you do need to sign up for. And this is the primary way that you'll be notified in terms of evacuation routes and fire updates. as well as safety instructions. So it's important to go to this website, and QR code, as I said, is over there, and sign up for it. Additional information, Genesis Protect was, people remember Zone Haven was the name prior time, and this will give you more information. This is an app that you can sign up for, and it'll give you information about your zone. You can put in your address and get information that way. So it, if I can. Another good app is Watch Duty. This one's interesting. I used it watching during the Paradise fires. You could see not only the evacuation zones, but the direction the fire is going. You can see the response, including air response. It's fascinating. It was very alarming to see the extent of the fire, but Watch Duty is a very useful tool to have. Again, MyShake is another app that the state of California has developed. It will give you an early warning, maybe a few seconds, but enough to get into someplace safe or try to start to get someplace safe. So this is, again, another download that you can use. So as I mentioned, WPV Ready, our function here between Woodside and Villa Valley, we work under the aegis of EPIC, which is an organization, again, sponsored by the Woodside Fire Protection District, that is here to help prepare and provide resources to residents. And this is where the FireWise communities is one of our main emphasis on terms of trying to get people to focus on getting their communities ready and to get recognition. Basically, FireWise is more or less an accounting mechanism. That's why signing up for the chipping program is so important, because this data is data that you need to report on an annual basis, how much you've chipped, how much work you've done in your community to ameliorate and mitigate against fire risk. And this, it's basically an incentive program, with the incentive being keeping your insurance, which is a good incentive. Hopefully there can be some reductions, but I don't know if that will happen. State Farm, I'm really happy they recognize it, but yet they're looking, what, for a 22% increase or something? Oh, you're getting a discount. You are getting a discount. Very good. Excellent. Okay. So anyway, there's, again, the QR code for the website is there. Now, one of the other things we're doing in terms of readiness is trying to deal with how do we cope with the actual disaster? How do we help communities focus? And there's two things we're looking at helping promote. One is basically a neighborhood hub concept, which is trying to find people in each community, and there's all the neighborhood associations and various organizations who are interested in being that hub, that place where people could go to. The whole idea of the hub is a low-tech mechanism for matching resources and needs. So if you need, if you need somebody with a chainsaw to do something, and then you have somebody has a card there that I have a chainsaw, I can come help you. These are resources that can be matched. So, but if you think about managing a disaster over a period of time, that there will be a lot of needs that need to be met, but we also have people with a lot of resources. So in addition to this, one of the things we're working on, the EPIC, Art Allen here with WPV CERT, which is the other organization that if you want to get into actual response during emergencies, but this will be a communicator group of people who are interested in providing a link if there's a big earthquake and the cell towers go down, will need a way for communities to be able to contact dispatchers. And so this is a network that's being set up that will require training. There's a training that's being set up on June 10th, 6:30 p.m. at Station 19. And there's already out the website, WPV Ready website, right, Mark? To link and sign up for this. So we're looking for people from all over to sign up for the training. And this will involve the use of radios to be able to communicate to a central location, command location. Anyway, so this is an important feature that we're presenting. And the other piece of it is also, again, the survivability aspect here. I don't have to emphasize after Kim's presentation that the cheapest thing to do is to do the home hardening. I really like the figures you presented. That was very useful. It's really not that expensive, but you compare that to, burning, what do we, deductibles, what, 25% or so? I think for most of these, it's fairly significantly high, I think even with the plan, right? For the fire insurance. Yeah. 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 So the cheapest thing you can do is do what's recommended by the Fire Protection District and to take care of things. Again, I just wanted to briefly mention WPV CERT, which is the response organization, that if you're interested in training to develop skills in terms of disaster preparedness, first aid, and how to organize and respond during an emergency, this is a great opportunity. We're having training coming up, Mark, in the fall. And that'll be again on the WPV CERT website. We look forward to everybody who wants to join us, and this will make our efforts when it does happen a lot easier. So anyways, that was I just wanted to go over those things very briefly. Any questions? Oh, okay, thank you very much.
Great. Well, thank you very much. Secretary John. And that's it for the presentations today. Thank you all for coming, and hopefully see you on the next time we have another workshop. I have a question.
Hello? Okay, there we go. So there's a question about the paint, fire-resistant paint. So the state of California, Office of the State Fire Marshal's Office, they have not certified any paints at this time yet. They haven't found one that's met all the different requirements. That doesn't mean they don't work. That doesn't mean that you can't use them. It just means we haven't put a stamp of seal on it because the requirements are so restrictive now, and there's so many different tests that are actually pretty expensive for a lot of companies to want to put money to get these types of listings done. But it's always worth a try. I know there's residents out there now. I've gone to do home inspections at their house, and they said they've been doing it for like 5 or 6 years. And they said the company that came out to do it, they just come out recurringly to repaint because it does wear off. You have to, there's maintenance to it. But they did do testing. They painted it, and they said they burned areas to see how it would do, and it would fizzle out and really not hold combustion to keep burning. So I don't discourage it, but I think it's worth looking at. And I think if residents, it's up to you if you wanna try it out. I do encourage that whatever company you go with, that you watch them apply the paint to let it dry, and not them just say, oh, you want to make sure you're watching them do the application, because you just never know what could be out there that they're trying to finagle what's really happening. So that's the only caution that I have with that. Yes, sir. So there was a question about, for windows, we've talked about what is strong, the best type of window put in, but the framing of the window. So there hasn't been much, wood is always looked at not a good idea, because if wood heats up enough and depending on the intrusion to give out to your window, but we've seen wooden trims on windows survive and do fine as long as as long as they're not dehydrated, they're fresh, they're strong, they're in good condition. So not dehydrated wood that maybe doesn't have much paint left on it. Because paint, don't forget, no matter what kind of paint, there is a certain amount of resistive properties that paint has anyway. So that would be my only thing with if you have a wood trim, is just making sure, and that there's no openings like going into, like, depending on how you're framing it, that there's no openings that go into your house. You want to make sure everything is sealed up pretty tight. I think, did you have a question? Okay. Okay. Well, thank you all for coming today. We look forward to more workshops.
Thank you all.